Have you ever felt like you don't quite fit in with anyone? Like every time you try to connect, it's as if you're speaking a different language? It's not arrogance, it's not pride, it's pain. The pain of feeling too much, of noticing what others ignore, of sensing the energy in a room before a single word is spoken. And Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. He knew that intelligence doesn't come only with ideas. It comes with silence, with the exhaustion of navigating a shallow world, with the frustration of being surrounded by noise, yet starved for real connection. For the intelligent man, social life is not a distraction. It is a test, a labyrinth of conventions, fake smiles, and empty conversations. It's the moment you're expected to smile, while inside you feel you're drifting. And no, it's not about being antisocial. It's about being too aware of the emptiness behind so many human interactions, too aware of how much energy is wasted just to maintain appearances. Schopenhauer once said, "The more valuable a man is, the more he tends towards solitude. Because in solitude, the mind breathes. In solitude, the spirit recharges. In solitude, there's no need for a mask. But society tells you otherwise. It tells you that being alone means something's wrong, that if you're not social, not performing, you're strange, you're broken. But maybe, just maybe, those who choose solitude are the ones who see most clearly. How many of us have stood in a crowded room and felt utterly alone? How many have laughed at surface-level jokes while feeling empty inside? How many are exhausted from explaining themselves, justifying themselves, trying, constantly, to be understood? Emotional intelligence comes with a cost. You become a human radar. You sense the fakeness. You feel hidden agendas. You detect the absence of depth. And so, you begin to avoid, not out of fear, but out of protection. Because you know, every social outing comes with an invisible price. And the price is always your heart, your anxiety, your essence. When you're truly intelligent, you stop seeking quantity. You begin to seek quality, a real conversation, a moment of sincere silence, a glance that says everything. But how rare are those now? The modern world is built on performance, on image, on false connections and digital validation. But the intelligent man sees right through it. And it hurts because he realizes most people don't want to know themselves. They only want to be accepted. And that's where the conflict begins. Intelligence brings clarity. Clarity brings pain. And pain brings withdrawal. You withdraw because you can't stand the noise. You withdraw because silence is more honest than any polite conversation. You withdraw because in solitude you find peace, you find order, you find truth. And maybe that's exactly what Schopenhauer understood so well. The deep man doesn't adapt easily. He doesn't accept easily. He doesn't tolerate the daily lies that keep the world spinning. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe, finally, you're starting to see clearly. Maybe social life isn't everything. Maybe it's just another escape where most people lose themselves. But you chose to stay with yourself, to listen to the silence, to learn from it. Because that is where true intelligence lives. Not in how loudly you speak, but in how deeply you understand without saying a word. Maybe you were that child who preferred to stay in your thoughts, who stared out the window and dreamed, who didn't get the jokes and didn't pretend to laugh. Maybe you've always felt a little different, a little quieter, a little deeper, and you were made to believe that was a flaw. But Schopenhauer would have understood you. Not only would he have validated your silence, he would have called it a virtue, because for the intelligent man, solitude is not a punishment. It's a refuge, a sacred space where thoughts take root, where the heart breathes. But society glorifies chaos. People brag about how many friends they have, how many parties they attend, how many messages they receive. But how many of them truly know themselves? How many can sit in a room alone without escaping into their phones? The intelligent man avoids social life not because he hates people, but because he has already learned the lessons others still resist. He knows, not every conversation is worth having. Not every person is good for your soul. Not every connection is sacred. Sometimes what seems close is just a subtle form of manipulation. Have you ever felt someone draining your energy just by being around you? Ever left a social gathering and needed hours, sometimes days, just to recover? That's not weakness, that's sensitivity. It's the sign that you're connected to yourself, that you longer tolerate anything that isn't real. Schopenhauer said, life is a constant struggle of wills, and the one who sees this retreats. He sees what others don't. He knows when he's being used, and he chooses not to play games that lack meaning. The intelligent don't hate others. They hate superficiality. They hate the pressure to always be available. They hate empty conversations. They hate sacrificing inner peace just to appear normal. So they choose silence. They choose to read, to write, to walk alone, to stare at the sky and say nothing. Because in those moments, they feel truly alive, more alive than ever in a room full of people who just don't understand. Modern social life is a costume party, a theater of masks, and the intelligent man sees the curtain falling. He sees everyone playing a role. He sees how no one says what they really think anymore, how honesty has become dangerous. And so, instead of conforming, he withdraws, not from contempt, but from instinct, to protect himself, to preserve his clarity, to remember who he is. If you've ever felt guilty for saying no to an invitation, if you've been labeled too intense, too serious, too quiet, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you're just awake, in a world that's asleep. Schopenhauer would have stood by you. He would have told you, don't change just to be accepted. Don't dim your light to fit in. Don't trade your peace for cheap applause. Because in the end, it's not how many people are around you. It's how much peace lives within you. The man who can live with himself has a freedom that no one can take. Have you noticed how many people can't stand silence? How most people seek company not for joy, but out of fear? Fear of being alone with their thoughts. Fear of hearing their inner voice. Fear of realizing that without others, they don't know who they are. But the intelligent man doesn't run from solitude. He confronts it until he embraces it. Because he knows truth is not found in the crowd. It's found in the depth of your own being. Schopenhauer knew the modern world would become a show, that people would learn to fake emotions, to smile out of habit, to say, "How are you?" without waiting for an answer. That's why he said the man who withdraws does not do so out of weakness, but out of lucidity. And lucidity hurts, because it reveals what others don't want to see, because you can't pretend anymore, because you can't treat life as a distraction. You seek meaning, and meaning isn't in the noise. It's in the calm, in introspection, in those moments when you breathe deeply and truly remember who you are. Maybe you've been judged for this, told you're too serious, that you should relax, that life is short, go have fun. But for you, fun doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean truth. It doesn't mean depth. And that's what you can't find in today's social life. At least, not in its current form. Because most people aren't looking for real connection. They're looking for validation, for attention, for proof that they're enough, even when they're not. The intelligent man can't stand lies, not even social ones. He won't laugh when something isn't funny. He won't compliment out of obligation. He won't play games that wear down the soul. So, he isolates himself. Because every outing becomes a burden. Every conversation, a test of patience. Every interaction, a struggle between honesty and acceptance. And here's the paradox. When you choose honesty, you lose many people, but gain someone much more valuable, yourself. Schopenhauer said it clearly. The truly free man is the one who can live with himself, without escaping, without lying, without needing an audience. That doesn't mean he doesn't need love. The intelligent man loves deeply, but rarely. And not to fill a void, but because he consciously chooses to share his rich inner world with someone equally alive. To him, one genuine moment of connection is worth more than 100 pleasing conversations. One honest, "I see you," is worth more than 1,000 polite words. One sincere look means more than a room full of applause. In a world obsessed with visibility, the intelligent man chooses to be invisible, not because he can't shine, but because he knows that real light comes from within. And it doesn't need a spotlight, it needs peace. There is deep power in the man who does not need to be the center of attention, who is not afraid of silence, who does not shrink in the absence of others, but thrives. That is the freedom Schopenhauer spoke of. The freedom of not depending on others to feel whole. The freedom of knowing that being quiet isn't weakness, it's depth. That being different isn't wrong, it's rare. People will never fully understand why you're silent, why you don't participate, why you choose a night. alone over a noisy crowd. They'll call you cold. They'll call you sad. They'll say something's wrong with you, but you know better. You know the battles you've fought in silence. You know how much you've grown alone. You know your silence is a sacred garden, and no one has the right to stomp through it with noise. Schopenhauer wouldn't have judged you. He would have looked you in the eye and said, "You chose well," because in a sea of noise you found the ocean of silence, and there you built a home for your soul. You don't need many people to feel complete. You need sincerity. You need depth. You need space to think, to feel, to breathe. Intelligent people avoid social life not because they hate others, but because they love themselves enough not to sell themselves short. Because they know every yes to the world can become a no to the heart. And life is too short for shallow conversations, too short for empty relationships, too short to live by other people's expectations. You may be alone, but you are not lost. You may be quiet, but you are not empty. You may be different, but in that difference lies your power. And if you've listened this far, it means you feel it. You see it. You are one of the few who still chooses to live with meaning, not for appearances, not for likes, but for something real, for something that matters. So no matter what they say, keep being you. Keep choosing stillness. Keep choosing depth. Because in a world that's forgotten how to feel, you are proof the heart still has a voice. If this message spoke to you, if you felt seen, maybe for the first time in a long time, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there, people like you still exist. People who feel, people who see, people who haven't lost themselves. And maybe, just maybe, this message will remind them they are not alone.